3 years into their marriage, James had never once come home to eat the meals she prepared. Every night, he worked until midnight before returning. It seemed that, to James, this marriage was nothing more than a piece of paper. For 3 years, every night was the same, except for 1 month ago. That night, James had drunk heavily. He stumbled back home, kicked open the bedroom door, yanked her out of bed, and grabbed her by the throat, demanding,
"Why wasn't it you who left this world? Why?"
Just as Lily finished setting the table and was about to go upstairs to rest, the medieval European-style door suddenly opened. James walked in, his tailored gray trench coat perfectly accentuating his tall frame, his steps steady like a nobleman from the Renaissance era.
"You're back? Would you like something to eat? I'll reheat the food for you. The bath is ready, you should take a shower first."
James coldly brushed her hand away, his expression resolute and unyielding.
Ivy is unwell and needs a blood transfusion. Starting tomorrow, you will donate your blood to her.
With one sentence, James condemned Lily to a living nightmare.
"I can't do it, it will harm me. James,
Lily, you should have departed long ago. You owe Emily, and this is your debt to repay. You have no choice."
James looked down at her with hatred, his eyes chilling.
"Lily, a life for a life. Letting you live 3 more years was already merciful."
With that, James stormed out, slamming the door behind him with a deafening crash. The wound on her forehead continued to bleed, and James's words echoed in her ears. Lily hugged herself tightly. A life for a life, did that mean she deserved this fate? But she hadn't caused Emily's departure. How could she explain it so that James would believe her? 3 years ago, she married James, thinking she was marrying for love. But it was only because Emily couldn't have children, and the family needed an heir, so James married her to silence the family's gossip.
"I know you hate me." Touching her forehead wailed, "But James, I love you."
Lily spent the night on the floor, waking up the next day to the noise of James's people. Whether she was willing or not, they took her to the hospital. As soon as she entered the ward, Sophie rushed over and slapped her, pointing angrily.
"Get out, you who caused my sister's suffering."
She heard James scolding her with a frown.
"Don't you know Ivy is unwell and can't be upset? How dare you lay a hand on her?"
Brother-in-law. Throwing herself into James's arms.
Lily's eyes welled up, turning red as she watched James hold Sophie. With a glimmer of hope, she tried to explain.
"James, it was Sophie who hit me first. I just raised my hand to block."
"Shut up! If it weren't for you causing Emily's departure, Ivy wouldn't be so agitated. You deserve this."
Lily froze, feeling a lump in her throat. James held Sophie, his face dark and brooding, casting a cold glance at Lily.
"Get out!"
At James's command, medical staff immediately grabbed her, searching for a vein with a syringe. In her panic, Lily pushed them away and tried to escape.
"Lily, are you looking for trouble?"
She hadn't run far before a strong hand caught her. Facing James's oppressive gaze, Lily clutched his shirt, trembling with fear.
"James, I have severe anemia. I really can't give blood to Sophie, it will harm me."
James was unmoved by her words. He dragged her into the blood drawing room, throwing her to the medical staff with a decisive command.
"Draw the blood."
Her arm was held down, and a sharp pain followed as the needle pierced her skin. Lily felt the world spinning, her consciousness fading. Through the haze, she saw James walking away without looking back, and her heart ached. When she woke up again, Lily saw the white ceiling of the hospital. She tried to move, but a slight attempt to sit up made her dizzy. A nearby nurse quickly stopped her.
"Lie down. You already have severe anemia. And now that you're expecting, you need to be extra careful.
In 3 years of marriage, she had always dreamed of having her own child. The elders of the Mu family had grown increasingly cold towards her because she hadn't had a child. Especially Grandpa Mu, the only one in the family who genuinely cared for her. Although he never said it, Lily knew he was disappointed every time he saw her.
A child.
Lily gently touched her abdomen, as if caressing the child's head. The thought of a little life growing inside her nearly brought her to tears of joy. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked the nurse.
Where is my husband?
Did James know she was pregnant? Just as she spoke, the door to the room opened, and James walked in. The doctor beside him whispered something in his ear, and James glanced at Lily with a cold, piercing look. The chill in his eyes made Lily shiver. James stood by her bed, ordering the doctor and nurse to leave. Alone in the room, he looked down at her without a word.
Terminated.
What did you say? James.
A woman as malicious as you will only bring a cursed child into the world. It's better to end it now.
Tears slid down Lily's cheeks, her heart wrenching in pain. She could accept being misunderstood, despised, and hated by James, but her child? Would her child also be doomed?
No. I won't do it. If you want to end my child's life, you'll have to take mine first.
The door to the room slammed shut, leaving Lily sitting on the bed. Her chest felt cold, freezing her to the core. Lily sat on the bed all night without sleeping. When someone pushed the door open, she was still in the same position as when James had left. The door to the operating room closed with a snap. All light vanished, and the cold surgical lamp shone down, blinding her. Her legs were bent, and as her skirt was lifted, she suddenly shivered and woke up.
I can't lose this child.
Taking advantage of the nurse's distraction, Lily knocked over the surgical tray, grabbed a scalpel, and pointed it at her heart. It wasn't large, but it was sharp enough.
Call James, or I'll end it right here.
Mrs. Mu, please don't do anything rash.
The call connected, and James's deep, magnetic voice came through the speaker.
What is it?
Hearing his voice, Lily's eyes instantly filled with tears. Lily froze, feeling a lump in her throat.
Get out!
At James's command, medical staff immediately approached Lily with a syringe. In her panic, she pushed them away and tried to escape.
Lily, are you looking for trouble?
She hadn't run far before a strong hand caught her. Facing James's oppressive gaze, Lily clutched his shirt, trembling with fear.
James, I have severe anemia. I really can't give blood to Sophie, it will harm me.
James looked down at her, his 6 feet 1 inch frame exuding an overwhelming presence. His thin lips pressed into a tight line, a clear sign to those who knew him well that he was about to lose his temper.
Let me keep the baby, or let me go.
James despised being threatened more than anything. Just as he was about to step forward and stop her himself, a young nurse rushed in, her face full of urgency.
Something's wrong. Miss Emily's condition has worsened.
James frowned, looking at Lily with a momentary hesitation before punching the door in anger.
I told you to keep the baby!
He glared at her, his eyes fierce enough to tear her apart.
You will give Sophie your blood now.
Lily felt a chill in her heart. Indeed, the only people James cared about were Emily and Sophie. With James' assurance, Lily, who had been like a taut string, suddenly relaxed and stopped resisting. The glass she had held to her neck fell to the ground as her hand dropped. The medical staff quickly grabbed Lily and led her to Sophie's operating room.
Get in.
As soon as they were out of James' sight, the medical staff became particularly rough, shoving her into the operating room. Lily, suffering from anemia, felt dizzy and unsteady, falling to her knees on the cold floor, unable to get up for a long time.
Even this can't make you lose your baby. Lily, you really are tough.
Lily looked up to see Sophie sitting in front of her, her face perfectly made up, showing no signs of illness. She was momentarily stunned, confused.
Aren't you?
Aren't I what? Surprised that I'm perfectly fine?
Sophie raised an eyebrow, a smug smile on her red lips, and aimed her sharp high heel at Lily's face.
Did you really think I had a rare blood disease? Only someone as foolish as you would believe that.
Sophie's heel pressed hard against Lily's face, making it difficult for her to breathe.
I've loved James since 3 years ago.
Sophie's eyes wandered as she spoke of James, filled with endless admiration.
But 3 years ago, James only loved my sister and never looked at me. When my sister passed away, I thought he would love me.
Sophie's gaze suddenly turned fierce as she glared at Lily, her nails digging into Lily's face.
But then you came along. Lily, you're so pathetic. James doesn't love you at all, yet you cling to him like a leech.
Lily began to sense something was wrong. Wasn't Emily's death an accident?
But it doesn't matter. Soon, I'll make you give up.
Sophie's red lips curved into a smile.
You'll know what it's like to have your heart shattered by the one you love most.
Lily took a few steps back, protecting her abdomen, and stared at Sophie defensively.
What do you want?
I won't make you lose your baby because I've decided to play a different game.
With that, Sophie waved her hand, and people immediately came over to gag Lily and pin her against the operating room door. The doctors and nurses inside had long been replaced by Sophie's people. A young nurse, under Sophie's orders, went to find James.
Mr. James, Miss Emily's condition is out of control. She needs a full blood exchange.
Previously, Sophie had undergone a partial blood exchange, but a full blood exchange would require twice the amount of blood. Pinned against the operating room door, Lily could see James' lips moving through the thick glass.
No. James, please don't.
Lily focused all her attention on James' reaction, her body trembling with tension. But James only hesitated for a moment before saying,
No matter the cost, Sophie must be fine, or I'll make the entire hospital pay.
The light in Lily's eyes instantly went out. Just before she lost consciousness, she saw Sophie's triumphant smile.
James, are you really this heartless?
When Lily woke up again, she found herself lying in a hospital bed, unsure of how long she had been asleep.
Where's James?
She needed to see James. Sophie didn't have a blood disease. She had to tell James the truth about this malicious woman. In the hospital room, James pushed the door open and saw Lily sitting on the bed, her pale face turned towards the window, devoid of any color. James's heart unexpectedly ached. Narrator, tone, serious Mrs. Green, seeing James enter, tactfully left the room.
James, tone, unfriendly, don't forget why I wanted you to keep that child. James, tone, cold, if you keep harming your body like this and it affects Ivy's treatment, don't blame me for being ruthless.
Lily slowly turned her face towards him, her voice ethereal.
Lily, tone, hopeful James, will you believe me just this once? Lily, tone, serious, Lily doesn't have a blood disorder. She's deceiving you. Emily's passing had nothing to do with me.
Lily's determined expression and clear, bright eyes momentarily shook James. Should he believe her just this once? The quiet atmosphere of the hospital room was shattered by a sharp voice.
Ivy, tone. Angry Lily, isn't it enough that you caused my sister's passing? Now you want to falsely accuse me?
Ivy rushed in from outside, furious, heading straight for Lily. James quickly held her back, pulling her aside.
Ivy, tone. Shouting, you heartless woman. What did our family ever do to you to deserve this? I'm already so sick. The doctors said my condition has worsened, and you still claim I'm faking it?
Seeing Ivy so agitated, James frowned. When he saw Lily about to speak again, he interrupted her without thinking.
James, tone, angry, shut up. What nonsense are you spouting?
Lily stared at James, a self-mocking smile on her face, as if she had expected this outcome.
Lily, tone, sad you never believed me.
Lily's expression suddenly changed, her gaze piercing through James's eyes.
Lily, tone, serious. James, you better never regret what you're doing today.
James's face hardened, a sense of unease rising within him. Sensing the tension, Ivy quickly clung to James's shoulder, whispering,
Ivy, tone, terrified brother-in-law, I hurt all over. Am I going to?
James's expression changed, and he immediately scooped Ivy up, rushing to the nearby operating room without looking back. Lily gave up trying to explain, not caring anymore. James, being the influential man he was, could easily find out the truth if he wanted to. Since he believed she was a wrongdoer, let him hate her. Lily touched her abdomen, a rare smile appearing on her face. Having this child was enough for her. The warm sunlight made Lily feel drowsy. She didn't pay much attention at first, but soon she lost consciousness on the hospital bench. Ethan happened to be at the hospital on business and saw Lily fainting. He rushed over, frowning as he recognized her. How had she become so thin in just a few months? Ethan looked around, frowning even more. Why was she alone in the hospital? Without hesitation, Ethan gently picked her up, handling her with the utmost care, as if she were his entire world. The cool touch on her forehead soothed Lily's feverish skin, making her feel comfortable. Lily opened her eyes slightly, seeing Ethan standing by her bed, dressed in a suit as if he had just finished an important meeting. Seeing her awake, Ethan quickly called the doctor for another checkup. After ensuring she was fine, Ethan relaxed. Lily, confused, asked,
Lily, tone, shy, why are you here? Did something happen to me again?
Again?
Ethan, a seasoned businessman, immediately caught on to Lily's problem, his hawk-like eyes locking onto her, forcing her to avoid his gaze. Seeing Lily's evasive look, Ethan finally withdrew his gaze, leisurely serving her a bowl of porridge.
James doesn't know about your condition, does he?
Lily's eyes flickered as she took the bowl and sipped the porridge. It tasted much better than the usual tonics she drank. Ethan stood by, quietly watching her sip the porridge like a little cat. After she finished the last drop, he nodded slightly.
Then how come he doesn't know you fainted with a fever in the hospital? If he's busy, couldn't he have arranged for someone to stay with you?
Lily fell silent, hesitating before explaining everything to Ethan. Ethan immediately punched the wall in anger, his face turning pale.
What is James thinking? You're his wife. How can he take your blood for another woman? Does James know about your condition now? I'll go find that jerk.
No, Ethan. I'm fine, really.
She and Ethan had grown up together. When she married James, her family was against it. She was willing to sever ties with her family to be with James. Since then, her family had treated her like a stranger, never helping her in difficult times. But Ethan had always been like an older brother, taking care of her. But this matter was too complicated. She knew James' methods. If Ethan helped her, he would face endless retaliation from James. She couldn't let those who helped her suffer because of her. In the CEO's office of the Moo Group, James' long, strong fingers gripped his phone, his hawk-like eyes narrowing dangerously.
What do you mean she's gone?
The hospital director on the other end of the line trembled, even through the phone.
Mr. James, your wife might have escaped. We've mobilized everyone to find her.
If you can't find her, you can kiss your job goodbye.
James coldly spat out the words and hung up the phone with a snap. His eyes narrowed, filled with dark, dangerous intent. Narrator, tone, hopeful. Very well, Lily. If you dare to run, you'd better not let me find you. Finally, Lily shook her head, apologetically looking at Ethan.
I'm sorry, Ethan. I don't want my child to be born without a father.
Ethan laughed self-deprecatingly, shrugging as if it didn't matter.
All right then, just don't come crying to me later.
At that moment, the tightly closed hospital room door was suddenly kicked open. The loud noise startled Lily. She looked over to see James walking in with a grim face, his hands in his coat pockets, his eyes fixed on Lily holding Ethan's hand, the atmosphere around him dropping to a freezing point.
James?
Lily looked at him in surprise, just about to ask why he was there when James cut her off coldly.
Lily, I never thought you were so good at seducing men. Even a man with a fiancé like Ethan falls for you.
James' cold gaze swept over them, his tone filled with disdain.
James, shut up! Don't you know what kind of person I am? If I wanted to leave with Ethan, would I be stupid enough to hide in the hospital and let you catch me?
Lily's eyes widened in anger, tears streaming down her face like broken pearls. She had been married to James for 3 years, loving him foolishly for 3 years. Did he really think she was a woman of loose morals? Lily froze, feeling a lump in her throat.
Get out!
At James's command, medical staff immediately grabbed her, searching for a vein with a syringe. In her panic, Lily pushed them away and tried to escape.
Lily, are you looking for trouble?
She hadn't run far before a strong hand caught her. Facing James's oppressive gaze, Lily clutched his shirt, trembling with fear.
James, I have severe anemia. I really can't give blood to Sophie. It will endanger my life.
James's cold voice came through the phone.
Hello?
Lily used to be enchanted by James's voice, but now it only felt overwhelmingly cold.
Did you send Sophie over?
So what? Do you have a problem with that?
James, if you don't want me to live here, just send me to another house. There's no need to make things difficult for me like this.
She lived in this house, and her husband's ex-girlfriend's sister also lived here. James must be deliberately making her life difficult.
I make the decisions in the Mu family. I can let anyone live here. When did you get the right to interfere?
With one sentence, James condemned Lily. She stood there holding the phone, stunned and unable to react. Seeing that Lily hadn't spoken for a long time, James lost his patience and hung up the phone. Lily stood alone in the room, listening intently to the beeping sound from the phone. Her heart felt empty and aching, as if a cold wind had blown through it. At the dinner table, Lily ate silently, then put down her chopsticks without looking at the 2 people across from her. She lowered her head and said,
I'm done eating.
She then tried to get up and leave.
Do you really not want to stay with us?
Lily didn't know what she had done wrong to provoke James again, but she felt a discomfort in her lower abdomen, a faint sense of heaviness. She was startled, remembering what Ethan had said when she met him that day.
Your health is already very poor. You're naturally anemic and not suited for pregnancy. If you keep donating blood to Sophie every day, within a month, you might lose the baby due to your weakened condition. Your health will deteriorate to the point where you can't keep your own child.
However, James continued to press her, lifting her chin with his strong fingers. His thin lips parted slightly.
What? Nothing to say!
Seeing Lily's indifferent attitude, James felt a blockage in his heart. Didn't she love him? Why couldn't she say a word to him now? She didn't even look at him. Lily's eyes were fixed on her own shoes. The discomfort in her lower abdomen grew stronger, and Lily felt a sense of foreboding. She anxiously said to James,
James, please let me go. I'm not feeling well today. I want to go upstairs and rest.
James, seeing her expression, became completely enraged. He gripped her shoulders angrily.
Not feeling well? Where are you feeling unwell? Speak up!
Her body was too fragile, and she eventually collapsed. James placed Lily on the large bed on the second floor, waiting for the doctor to treat her. The baby couldn't be saved, and the doctor was now trying to stop the bleeding to prevent further harm to Lily. Seeing Lily's pale face, James suddenly punched the door. His heart was filled with anger and pain. Why did this woman have to be so stubborn? Why wouldn't she yield to him? The butler hurriedly ran in from outside, as if he had something to say. James glanced at the still sleeping Lily, closed the door, and followed the butler to the study.
What happened? Hadn't the hospital always said that her condition was good? Didn't they say that donating blood wouldn't affect her health or pregnancy?
The butler frowned, as if considering how to tell James. After a moment, he spoke the first sentence.
Madam walked back from the cemetery.
With just that sentence, James's breath caught. She walked back from the cemetery? In her anemic and pregnant state, she walked all that way?
There were blood stains all the way from the cemetery to the Moo residence.
That sentence was like a small nail, piercing James's heart, leaving him speechless for a long time. The butler glanced at James and said no more, closing the study door as he left. James remained standing stiffly, unmoving, until dusk fell. When Lily woke up, she saw a white ceiling. She reached out to touch her flat abdomen, stunned for a moment before realizing there was no longer a child there. Before she passed out, she had seen a lot of blood and had a feeling the child couldn't be saved. Now, faced with the reality, she couldn't help but feel heartbroken. The door creaked open softly. Grace entered quietly with a bowl of soup, followed by James, whose face was clouded with anger. Grace placed the bowl on the table beside Lily and left. James stayed, standing by Lily's bed, looking down at her. His tall figure cast shadows of varying depths on Lily's face. She glanced at the bowl of soup on the table, filled with fresh fish soup instead of the liver she had always hated. But it still didn't stir her appetite. Lily turned over, lying with her back to James, and closed her eyes slightly. It was clear she didn't want to deal with James. James sat down beside her, and Lily frowned slightly, then moved a bit further away. Noticing Lily's small movement, James's face darkened. His lips pressed tightly together as he stared at her without speaking.
Drink the soup!
Lily kept her eyes closed, pretending not to hear, continuing to feign sleep. Seeing Lily ignore him, James inexplicably grew angry. He roughly pulled her up from the bed.
Get up and drink it! I know you're not asleep!
Pulled up by James, Lily stared at him, her silent gaze questioning if he found this amusing. James was momentarily stunned. He remembered Lily looking at him with deep affection and also with questioning eyes. It seems I came at a bad time, ruining your fun. Hearing this voice, Lily immediately got up from Ethan's embrace and saw James standing nearby with a dark expression, glaring at her. Even though Sophie's hand was still on his arm, Lily felt a surge of anger. She had only exchanged a few words with Ethan. Why did James look at her and Ethan as if he had caught them in the act?
James, what do you mean by this?
You know exactly what I mean. Come here.
Lily looked at James but didn't move.
Don't make me come over and drag you.
Seeing Lily and Ethan together ignited a burning anger within him.
James, can't you speak properly? Don't you know Lily isn't well?
Lily is mine. How I treat her is none of your business.
James gave Ethan a cold look and snorted.
Next time, think about your own status before you speak.
Ethan was left speechless, his face turning red with anger. James glanced at him, then looked at Lily, who had her head down. Just as he was about to ask why she hadn't come over, Lily suddenly raised her head, her eyes clear.
Who said Ethan is an outsider?
James's expression changed, staring at Lily with a cruel look.
Is that so?
Michael is my good friend. We grew up together, and he's always looked after me like a brother. What's wrong with him caring about me? How does that make him an outsider?
You can go out with Sophie, have candlelight dinners. Why can't I talk to Michael?
Sophie, hearing this, sneered and leaned closer to James, almost nestling in his arms.
James and my sister were a couple before. It was you, a shameless woman, who broke them up. Naturally, my relationship with James is closer than yours.
Lily's face turned even paler at her words, while James, holding Sophie, just looked at Lily coldly without saying a word.
James, Do you remember who your wife is?
Lily felt suffocated and walked past James, not wanting to see him anymore. James could be with whoever he wanted. However, James wasn't planning to let her go so easily. He pushed Sophie aside and chased after Lily. He strode forward, grabbed Lily's wrist, and dragged her along.
James, what are you doing now?
James didn't answer, pulling her to the car, shoving her inside, and closing the door.
Drive home.
Lily froze, feeling a lump in her throat.
Get out!
At James's command, medical staff immediately grabbed her, searching for a vein with a syringe. In her panic, Lily pushed them away and tried to escape.
Lily, are you looking for trouble?
She hadn't run far before a strong hand caught her. Facing James's oppressive gaze, Lily clutched his shirt, trembling with fear.
James, I have severe anemia. I really can't give blood to Sophie. It will endanger my life.
3 p.m., S-City Airport. James, dressed in a black trench coat, exited the plane with a stern expression. The butler had already prepared the car as instructed and was waiting at the airport entrance.
To the old house.
The butler, aware of Lily's situation, hesitated before speaking.
Sir, the madam is gone. You shouldn't dwell too much on this matter.
Before he could finish, James shot him a deadly glare, silencing him instantly. The Green family mansion was eerily quiet. Everyone was dressed in black, standing in silence, resembling a funeral scene.
Where is she?
His voice trembled slightly as he scanned the room. No one dared to speak. James seemed to be struggling with himself.
Where is Lily? Bring her out to see me.
Everyone began to sob quietly. Mrs. Green stepped forward, covering her face as she cried.
Sir, the madam is really gone. Before you came back, Ethan took her body away. She can't come out to see you anymore.
James's mind went blank for a moment. Lily had let Ethan take her away? Anger surged within him. Lily was his woman. What right did Ethan have to take her away? Just as James was about to confront Ethan, a commotion erupted at the mansion's entrance.
What are you doing? You can't just come in.
Ethan, leading a group of people, each carrying a large wreath, all dressed in black suits, clearly there for a funeral. Ethan's face was grim as he led his men forward. James met them head-on. He had been looking for Ethan, and now Ethan had come to him.
Hand over Lily.
Without a word, Ethan punched James in the face.
How dare you ask for her? What right do you have to mention her name? Did you ever care about her when she was alive?
James got up from the ground, signaling his bodyguards to stay out of it. This was a personal grudge between him and Ethan. James didn't back down and punched Ethan back.
It's none of your business. Lily is my woman. How I treat her is my concern. She belongs to the Green family in life and in death.
Ethan staggered but steadied himself, then punched James in the stomach, grabbing his collar.
Are you still not satisfied after driving her to despair? She's gone, and you still won't let her rest in peace? For the sake of Sophie, you forced her to end her pregnancy and donate blood. James, do you have any humanity left? If you didn't love her, you should have let her go. Why did you keep her trapped? Do you really not know if Emily's death had anything to do with her? None of this was her fault. Why did she have to bear so much pain?
Ethan lost control, shouting furiously in James's ear. Finally, James detected a hint of something in Ethan's words. He stared at Ethan, his eyes fierce.
Explain yourself. What do you mean I drove her to despair?
Ethan sneered, releasing James and pulling a phone from his pocket, throwing it at James.
See for yourself.
James caught the phone and looked down. His heart skipped a beat. It was Lily's phone. It was the same phone he had bought her 3 years ago when they got married. He hadn't expected her to still be using it.
James, you insisted Lily was responsible for Emily's death. Now she's gone. Are you satisfied? Look at this. What were you doing at 11:30 p.m. 2 days ago? The last call on Lily's phone was to you.
That statement was like a dagger, piercing James's heart. James looked through the text message records, his frown deepening.
Sophie found out you completely betrayed your marriage, and that's why she took such a drastic step. She trusted you and even called you to confirm, but your phone was off.
James stood there, stunned, holding Lily's phone, a look of confusion crossing his face for the first time. The last call she made was to him? James's fingers turned white as he stiffly climbed the stairs, gently pushing open Lily's room door. Following James's instructions, the room remained untouched, just as it was when Lily left. There were still some untreated stains on the floor, now dried and stark against the floorboards. James crouched down, his fingers pausing over the stain. Suddenly, an image of Lily, eyes full of tears and despair, flashed in his mind. James recoiled as if burned.
How could she be gone?
That woman cherished her life so much, even fearing a simple blood draw. Where did she find the courage for such a drastic act? James refused to believe that Lily was truly gone. In front of Lily's dressing table, the mirror bore her lipstick-written words, each one a thorn piercing James's heart, leaving him as wounded as Lily. No more goodbyes. Because, forever, we will never meet again. James suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest, making it hard to breathe. Every corner of this room was filled with Lily's presence, a presence he once despised. James lay down on Lily's bed, inhaling the scent of her hair, everything still unchanged.
How could that woman just disappear without a word?
James quickly began investigating the entire incident, starting with who sent those 2 text messages to Lily. He had been in Italy during that time, clearly indicating someone else had sent those messages to Lily with malicious intent. That woman must have misunderstood something, leading to her despair. With this realization, James's eyes grew cold. If he found out who was behind it, he wouldn't let them off easily. James's assistant, Andy, quickly traced the IP address of the messages and brought the person responsible to James. James, sitting on the sofa with a glass of red wine, looked down at the person. Andy threw the person at James's feet and stood coldly by, watching. No one dared to provoke James, knowing the consequences. Death!
Mr. James, I don't know anything. Please spare me. Please.
James threw Lily's phone in front of the man, his gaze icy.
Did you send these?
The man cautiously picked up the phone, seeing the last 2 messages he had sent.
Mr. James, I was wrong. Please spare me. I won't do it again. I was just following orders. Someone paid me to send those messages. I was greedy. Please, Mr. James, forgive me this once.
The man kept begging, his head hitting the floor repeatedly.
Who told you to send them?
Andy, realizing the importance, kicked the man down and searched his pockets for his phone, checking the call records.
I don't know. It was a woman. She paid me and promised more if I did as she said. I was greedy and followed her instructions. That's all I know.
Andy compared the man's call records with the call to Lily, finding them identical, both from an untraceable source. James's face darkened, and Andy quickly left with the phones.
I'll investigate immediately.
Within half a day, Andy traced the call's IP address. When he brought the results to James, his expression was complex. James, not suspecting anything, eagerly opened the file. His eyes turned cold as he read the address. It was the residence of Sophie. In the luxurious and elegant villa, a woman's sharp and triumphant laughter echoed.
Haha, that wretched Lily is finally gone. This has lifted a huge weight off my chest.
Ha, I know. Thanks to you pretending to be James. She believed it so easily. Don't worry. I won't shortchange you on the money I promised.
Ha ha ha, that fool really believed it and went to end her life? With that kind of brain, how did anyone ever think she could have harmed Emily back then?
Sophie stood in the opulent, palace-like villa, mocking Lily's foolishness over the phone. But the next moment, the villa door was suddenly kicked open. Seeing who it was, Sophie turned pale with fright. James walked in with a grim face, his silent gaze creating a strong sense of pressure.
James, why are you here all of a sudden? Is something wrong?
James's cold gaze swept over Sophie, and he asked only one question.
How's your condition lately?
Sophie's face turned white. She wasn't actually sick, and being questioned by James made her uneasy, but she quickly regained her composure.
The hospital didn't have enough blood, and Lily refused to donate. The doctor said I couldn't undergo the blood transfusion. But luckily, they found a matching bone marrow, and after the transplant, I'm getting better.
Oh, really?
James's gaze tightened, becoming so piercing that Sophie couldn't meet his eyes. Feeling the pressure, Sophie tried to maintain her forced smile. James coldly looked at her, then clapped his hands. Andy led a group of people in, dragging 2 people in doctor uniforms and throwing them at Sophie's feet. Andy kicked the 2 to the ground, and they immediately confessed, begging for mercy.
Mr. James, please spare us. We were just following orders from Miss Sophie.
She said Mrs. James meant nothing to you, so we didn't need to respect her. Miss Sophie promised us $1 million and control of the central hospital if we followed her instructions.
Mr. James, we won't dare again. Please spare us. It was all Sophie's doing.
She said you hated Mrs. James the most and would reward us if she was gone.
The 2 pointed at Sophie, confessing everything while clinging to James's legs, begging for mercy. James, annoyed by their noise, signaled Andy to take them away. Then he coldly stared at Sophie.
Now, do you have anything to explain?
Sophie's face turned completely white. Knowing James had found her out, she tearfully tried to gain his sympathy.
Brother-in-law, let me explain.
She reached out to grab James's arm, but he coldly pushed her away.
Yes. I lied. I'm not sick. What's wrong, brother-in-law? Are you feeling sorry for that wicked woman? Do you remember how my sister died? What did she do wrong to have everything taken by Lily? Brother-in-law, have you forgotten how my sister died? Lily caused my sister's death. Isn't it better that she's gone? Now my sister can rest in peace.
Sophie's hysterical shouting and cursing made James feel a deep sense of disgust.
Not ending your life is already a mercy for Emily's sake. You don't deserve to be her sister.
Sophie felt a chill run through her, as if she had fallen into an icy abyss. James left without looking back. As the 2 men in black approached, Sophie retreated in fear, trembling and shouting.
What are you doing? Stay away! No! Let go of me!
Night fell at the Misty Bar. Another bottle of liquor was placed in front of James. He looked up to see Ethan sitting across from him, a cold smile on his face.
If you're a man, drink it.
James stared at him for a moment, then without a word, picked up the bottle of whiskey and drank it down. Seeing this, Ethan opened a bottle for himself and drank it too. The 2 men sat in silence, drinking.